Hello and welcome back to the Brockton Bay Chronicles. Thanks for being here. My name's Keith. I'm joined as always by my good friend and parahuman newbie, Andy. Hey dude, what's up?
Not a whole lot. Wondering if we're getting near the tipping point with climate change here, with all the stuff going on. I saw people, I think, in Finland that were out at the beach and hanging out with reindeer that had walked out into the ocean. So who knows what's happening anymore. But anyway, for today, we will be reviewing Arc 16, Monarch, chapters 11 through 13. And as far as new business, drum roll, please. We now have 200 subscribers. Thank you, one and all, for joining us on this journey. And we'll also be going over some questions and comments.
Yes, we hit the 200 milestone. Thanks, folks. We appreciate you being here with us, those who have subscribed. And those of you who haven't, why not throw us a sub? We'd be very grateful. So let's move on to our questions and comments at this time. We have a follow-up from Freak Circus, who is chiming in with regards to my question to everyone about whether or not I was being too critical of Taylor. Freak Circus adds this to the conversation. I don't think you're being too critical of Taylor, but I do think different perspectives will have different takes on this situation. I personally am more understanding of her reasoning. She feels like this is a culmination of all her efforts to rescue Dinah. Coyle's plan is working out. He should be more elated now than ever. And even Lisa encouraged her to talk to him. She loves her father, but the way she sees it, it's either now or never. If she had left without knowing Danny was okay, then I'd give her more grief about it. Marquis interlude is another one of my favorites. It's fascinating to see the inner workings of the birdcage and how cell block leaders establish and maintain power and all the nuances that come with it. Thanks, Freak Circus. There's more to the comment there. Andy, you may want to chime in on that, but thanks, Freak Circus. I appreciate you being understanding of my my harsh, I guess you could say, harsh take on Taylor's attitude when it comes to dealing with her father. And also for chiming in on the politics and the goings-ons in the birdcage. Andy, you want to add anything to that conversation?
No, I think that covers it. And we had kind of touched on that a little bit, that different perspectives and contexts would play into it.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with what he said, that she did at least check that Danny was going to be okay. So that helps give her a little bit of a pass on that.
Yes. And we hear now from a new contributor, Sword Crab. And this has to do with the conversation. One of the other commenters someone had made a comment last episode about Pigot's attitude. And Sword Crab says, I disagree with that commenter that said Pigot is anti-Cape. If you reread her section after the Nilbog fight, you can see how she might have gone that way. Yeah. But then Calvert explains how he shot his captain to improve his chances and how he wishes he had triggered. And after that, Pigot realizes that the problem isn't the capes. There's all kinds of effed up people with and without powers. And I'm pretty sure she wasn't promoted for her attitude either. Again, in her bit of that interlude, they were already talking about promoting her before she woke up. That promotion is a bit of a Band-Aid to cover up the fact that they lost the whole town and that the team they sent in got slaughtered. Bit of a reward for surviving, bit of a bribe to avoid her raising attention. Thank you, Sword Crab. Yes. Looking at things in this light, as you laid it out here, that's true. If you remember, Andy, I'm sure you do. The point is valid that Pigot was out. And Calvert had to be the one to tell her that they were going to promote her. So that was already happening. As far as her attitude overall, yeah, I might be being a little wishy-washy one way or the other about whether she was or wasn't anti-Cape. After we finished last episode, I started thinking back to the Weld interlude and how he was interacting with her and how she seemed to be, her mission was to help integrate capes with society, with the non-powered individuals. So I've been going back and forth on that. What do you think about Sword Crab's comments here?
Well, I'm still pretty anti-Pigot, and I see her as pretty ruthless and still kind of anti-Cape. And the reason I say that is I see her as being very manipulative. So,
well, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, Weld is a very his thing is that he wants everybody to kind of work together, right? He sees this as a positive symbiosis, if you will, that the capes will help humanity and humanity will benefit and will be happy with the capes and that kind of thing. And I think Pigot is just kind of playing up on that to kind of keep him happy. I don't really see her as her being her attitude, but just saying what Weld wants to hear, so to speak.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I could be super biased. And then every time I read her stuff, I was like, ah.
Okay. Yeah. No love for Emily there. Andy's not cutting her a break. I got you. I hear you, bud. And then finally, I have a question for Andy that I will pose later. I think it's going to be more appropriate after we finish getting through these remaining chapters. So I look forward to asking that question and getting your reply at that time there, bud. So
sounds good.
All right. So for now, we're done with that. And we were going to move on to our review. Skitter is in quite the pickle. We're picking up Arc 16, Chapter 11. She's been teleported into this house. Coyle is taking a shot at her, or Director Calvert. Yeah, okay, whatever, punk. He's taking a shot at her. She's managed to she got hit. My first read, I thought, Wildbow does a good job, as usual, laying out the sensation, the pain, describing the situation, making us think in that moment, my God, our heroine here has been shot. Were your hairs on the back of your neck standing up as well?
I'd say so. I was picturing that she would do something like from the old Westerns that they would do sometimes where they use cobwebs and stuff to try to stop the bleeding. And maybe if the bullet hadn't gone all the way through, maybe try to get, a bug to get it out, which would have been just disgusting, but, wrapping threads around it to try to pull it out. Yeah, I was thinking she was going to be, just a few minutes from death, and somebody was going to have to do something pretty amazing to save her. So I was figuring that was the direction it would go, and not prepared at all for the direction it did go.
So it looks like the costumes are bulletproof to an extent. So you figure this guy's carrying, maybe a 45 or something like that, standard issue PRT. And I do like the, not to skip too far ahead, but Wildbow has stayed in world, he hasn't broken any of his rules in that Skitter escapes, as she points out to Gru later. Skitter escapes because of things that Coyle didn't know. You could make the argument, some people might, that, oh gosh, how could she get out of this situation? Well, he didn't know that the strength of her costumes. He didn't know she had a gun. So yeah, I think there was enough, I wouldn't even say wiggle room. I think there was a path for her to get out of this. What do you think?
I would also add in that he probably didn't or couldn't factor in adequately how powerful she is, even when she's not fully conscious, or
right,
she's not actively doing stuff. Just as she called it, her passenger is somehow, even though she's in bad shape, coughing, feeling like she's shot and that kind of thing, the bugs are still gathering. Bugs are still pouring in and stuff. And I don't think, I think anybody, if they were strategizing, they would say, well, once she's shot, the bug thing should pretty much die down. She's going to be just trying to stay alive and just stay conscious. So she won't be able to do much of anything. But instead, it seems like she's pulling bugs from, I don't know, South Philly or something. They're coming from everywhere. So
Yeah. Hey, you know what? Before we go any further, folks, it's summertime here in Arizona, and it's monsoon season, and we've got a summer monsoon storm bearing down on our area. So it's possible you may end up hearing some thunder, and maybe the internet crackles a little bit as we go forth. So just wanted to give everyone a heads up that there may be the occasional rumble in the background. So the passengers, we see how something is keeping her bugs active, maybe not deliberately. I think at one point, last chapter or last arc, she had mentioned how her bugs stay on the previous task they were ordered to do. And now we see where these things, when she's in danger, they come flowing out. When she was in that room, they were forming a wall between her and Calvert's men. They automatically started weaving rope and spider silk cord and so forth. Interesting idea. The question might be how much of that is her subconscious and how much is this passenger thing that's being alluded to.
and that's a great point, and it might also have a factor with how well the integration happens between the parahuman and the passenger.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe some people's brains are more pliable or more able to integrate, and so then you end up with people who are more powerful than there are people that can kind of do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you end up with somebody like Uber or Leet, where they have power but not that great, almost like Neo in the Matrix, until he realized and until he could finally say, this is all a simulation, so I can do anything.
Right.
Until he got to that point in his brain, he set his mind free, as they said, he wasn't able to achieve his potential. And maybe the folks that are more powerful are better at being able to kind of think, well, the sky's the limit. Who knows what I could do?
That's true. Did you make anything of the situation where Coyle kept telling his men no grenades? I mean, we find out later why. Did you find that interesting? Because Skitter kept referring back to that. Wouldn't it have been easier if he tossed grenades at me? Why didn't they teleport me onto a bomb or something like that? Were you, at this moment, able to pick anything out of that? Or did it just come to you later once we found out the reasoning?
I thought Wildbow was maybe trying to throw a red herring in there, and get the reader to focus on that, and it would turn out to be nothing. So I wasn't sure. I was got me off my feet a little bit, and I was kind of like, well, that seems like there must be something because it keeps coming up, but maybe he's doing that on purpose to throw us off. So I kind of filed it away, but didn't really focus on it.
She starts making use of swarm clones. She has one outside the window as she's preparing to make her exit, using her gun to fire and break up some of the wood planks. And then once she does get outside, she's got, I believe she said 5 or 6 of them. Her power is pushing out. I believe she's picking up some additional coverage at this point. She really does a good job, even in her panicked state, of figuring out how to escape the room, escaping outside, and then getting past the soldiers, Coyle's men. I would be interested to see what her new master ranking is at this point, and possibly her thinker rating.
Yeah, and a couple other things I'd like to point out.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty ruthless the way Coyle ends up using one of his men basically as the ignition switch. Once the pepper spray has caught him on fire, that was pretty cold-blooded, but I guess it's to be expected. And the other thing was that you covered a lot of this stuff. There's a lot of different things going on here, but she sends the cockroaches to take out the headlights.
Yes.
And that's that's pretty key, because that makes it even more easy for the defense or the perimeter to mistake the clones for her,
Yeah.
without those headlights. And so it's just the way that she's directing all these different prongs of her attack to try to escape. And then when she sees something coming, oh, they're going to shoot with the machine guns, then she thinks to not be right under the window, but in a corner, and her feet facing the gunfire, and all these things. And it's like, well, wait a minute. She's got this giant dent in her chest. She's about to catch on fire. She can hardly breathe, and she's doing all this stuff. So yeah, I think your point on ratings is well taken, because it seems to be cranking up.
Yeah. At this point in the story, she's been through a lot. I mentioned this before. It's not like all of a sudden she sprung to life a fully formed cape capable of doing all this stuff. She's been in a lot of battles. So she's grown in the use of her powers, and I don't think I had any problem with this. It was as tense a chapter as any Vince Flynn or Tom Clancy novels with the hero trapped by the terrorist. That was definitely for sure how I was feeling. And she didn't get out unscathed. I mean, she took, as we said, she took a bullet to the chest, and then she took another one in her forearm.
Right. Yeah. She is pretty beat up, and somehow she keeps moving and keeps, deploying different things, start getting in their heads, starts tying different threads to different people and getting them to do different things. And then that's kind of when it becomes apparent why Calvert didn't want him to use grenades.
Mm-hmm. She gets out of the house, crawls her way across the lawn, uses her swarm voice to start messing with the minds of the soldiers, and eventually finds a gap in a fence and gets her way through. This whole while, Coyle. Wildbow is reminding us that she is in fact pretty injured. Coyle at one point hops in one of those Jeeps or trucks and then drives off, and leaving Skitter to wonder whether or not he considered the situation lost or what his plan was. She did a good job. She used the method that she had to escape the hospital back in the Leviathan arc. She raided, as she put it, the soldiers looking for resources. What can I use? What can I have my bugs get to that can improve my situation?
Yeah, and she finally gets the keys, and then realizes, oh wait, yeah, I'm 16, but I've never done student driving.
No, she drove off at a very slow rate. Imagine this: you probably not been behind the wheel of nothing more complicated than bumper cars, maybe, if that. And now you've got to drive some, a half-ton pickup truck or something like that, a military vehicle.
Through an obliterated town, with junk in the streets everywhere and water and who knows what else. So yeah, that's pretty challenging even for an experienced driver.
Yeah. Let's see. And so that moves us on toward the end of this chapter, getting ready to roll into chapter 12. And she does pull over after she successfully escapes, and she has to reason which path to take. Does she go back and grab her father, or does she go and try to find her teammates? And in this instance, I thought her reasoning was sound. Her dad, if she went to check on him by herself, it's not like she could rescue him and then he would help her rescue her teammates. Her teammates would be better in a fight to rescue her dad if it came down to that. Did you have any problem with that reasoning?
No, yeah, that totally made sense. And one other thing you had kind of touched on was, and Wildbow, I think, plays this up really well, and it's used in a lot of places and sometimes in a funny way, but that whole thing was, did he know that I was going to do this, and then that's why he did this? Or did he know I was going to know that he knew that I knew? And And so the whole time you're scratching, well, did Coyle or Calvert drive away because that's what he wanted to do?
Right.
Or, and so this whole time you're kind of scratching your head and thinking, oh my gosh, is the other shoe going to fall at any minute? Is there a bomb in the vehicle? What things could happen here? And that'd be the worst, right? Is she finally makes it to the car and then she starts it and it's got an ignition bomb and it just blows up. The end.
So yeah, right. So you're pretty satisfied with the level of uncertainty and how Wildbow has played with us at this point, played with our emotions in this situation.
Definitely, yeah. Coyle is the ultimate choose your own adventure kind of thing where you don't know which direction it's going to go.
Mm-hmm. She goes looking for her teammates. She tries as we're moving into chapter 12. She reasons the best place to try to find them. Where would they be? She does track down her teammates and starts trying to map out a strategy to rescue them. She doesn't want to go on the offensive at first. She surveys the area using her powers, picks up her teammates, Gru, Imp, Bitch, Dinah, and the faux Skitter, this body double that the Undersiders have no clue as to the situation, that she's been teleported out, obviously. But it turns out that Dinah does. This was a pretty tense situation leading up to Skitter's pell-mell assault.
Yeah, it's interesting that she kind of uses Coyle against his planning against it, because she's able to see that there are these groups that are kind of doing the leapfrog thing, and they apparently are trying to keep something in view or in range. And so she figures, all right, if I can figure out where the center of that is, that's probably where I'll find my team. But then also that first part was so tense, just that she had been teleported, that I wasn't thinking at all of the other end of that equation, that, all right, what's the team going to think when Skitter disappears? How is he going to just do something to them too? Or, how, he's not powerful enough to take them all out. But I was so wrapped up in the way Wildbow created that scene with her in a burning building surrounded by people with guns, that I didn't even think, oh yeah, he would have had to done something, wouldn't he? So that they didn't all freak out. And he did an amazing job of tricking them with this body double, even going to the point of getting the, I guess, leaked to make, a swarm device or whatever. So
she called it a swarm box, and I think he called it a famine engine. Yeah, leak, get over yourself.
Yeah, seriously.
Famine engine. Oh my gosh.
Plague of locust engine might have been more. Famine was a different biblical thing, I think, than the locust. But I mean, one kind of led to the other. But anyway, I digress. But yeah, it's I think she does a great job, and I couldn't figure out what Dinah was doing at first.
Yeah, right.
It seemed like she was kind of into it, but then I was like, what is with all this? But yeah, lots of twists and turns here, and it kept me off balance the whole time.
Yeah, this was definitely one of those times where you needed to be inside of Skitter's head to figure out what Dinah was going. I had no clue,
Right.
And Skitter's reasoning it through for us, because she's our POV, and Dinah's like, yeah, come to me now, and don't take time to set things up, which is, as she said, that's her normal strategy, because she, Field Marshal Skitter looking to her utility kit, trying to figure out what her weapons, what her assets are, marshaling her forces, and then wading into battle. That's normally how she operates. And she knew that Coyle knew that about her. And the counterpart to that, which was was Dinah telling her, no, be aggressive, come in now.
Yeah, and it totally makes sense that somebody who has tons of basically foot soldiers, even though a lot of them have 8 feet instead of 2, is going to just try to figure out how to utilize all these things that are not that powerful in themselves. It's the weight of them all at once that does things, and how to how to position them and everything for maximum effect. But yeah, to your point, Coil's going to know that. So you've got to kind of do something that's not expected or not in the normal pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And Dinah is trying to clue her into that, and I'm like, why is she scratching herself? Did one of the bugs bite her? I didn't know what was going on there.
No clue. And then that moment of realization, a little further into the chapter, that moment of realization when Skitter comes out of the sewer and realizes that her positioning now is such that she can attack all of the mortar crews. Whereas if she had tried to attack too far away from the group, she couldn't take out all the mortar crews at once. Being inside the area of effect, Dinah's power told her that would give Skitter the best chance to begin mounting an assault.
Great point. Yeah. She might have been able to do something if she could have got like one mortar crew to shoot another one, by pulling stuff out of line or whatever. But yeah, this gives her the best chance. And so it's really good that Skitter trusted in Dinah and went with kind of what she was encouraging her to do.
And Wildbow takes this moment to remind us that these two young ladies have never interacted personally. The last time Skitter saw her, the poor girl was doped up and was answering questions put to her from Coil. And now these two are teaming up after a fashion, trying to find the best way to remedy the situation. Now, Dinah knows that ultimately she's using Skitter. She's I shouldn't say that. She's putting Skitter in the best place to be successful, which unfortunately means having her teammates think that she's turned on them. That whole thing. So moving a little further into the chapter, this faux Skitter, let's see, our Skitter does attack the crews, all of Coil's men. Faux Skitter is probably wearing some kind of a communication device, and she implements her part of the plan and does this Benedict Arnold act, shoots bitch, then is teleported away. Why don't you talk about that chaotic scene and what were you thinking at that moment?
Well, this one was tough. It looked again like, all right, how is she going to get out of this one? It didn't seem like there would be any way that she'd be able to tell, it's like the two Spider-Men pointing at each other. How are you going to know which one is the real one? And especially with the famine engine going on, Skitter can't really control the bugs that well. They're getting overridden by this kind of repeating signal of just attack, do this, do that. And so it's very chaotic, and there doesn't seem to be an easy way out or an easy way to figure out who is who. And even if they are going to figure out if it's going to be soon enough to keep them from killing the wrong one.
Yeah, the famine engine. I personally like that. It wasn't, it did not have the elegant control of Skitter's insects that she does, obviously from her power. It was kind of it was effective, but it was more of a blunt force, a blunt instrument compared to her surgical use of a scalpel.
Right. Yeah, but to Skitter, that's very apparent. But to people on the outside, it's just here are all those dang bugs flying around, biting everything. So to them, it's very hard to tell the difference, I would think.
And during this whole thing, where Skitter's trying to egress into the area, we are constantly reminded that she's in pain and that she's trying to overcome the fact she's been shot and a couple of times. It continues to add to the dire nature of the situation that she finds herself in. And then faux Skitter turns and shoots bitch and then is teleported away. Skitter yells and immediately begins having another coughing fit and has to figure out the best way to remedy the situation. Her teammates now think she's turned on her and turned on them, and she's too far away to do anything, and she's too hurt.
and it plays into a fear that they had all along. She betrayed them, or seemed like she was betraying them once before, or had plans to betray them, and then here it's happening again, and it's very kind of in your face.
Oh
It's
yeah.
people jump to the conclusion oftentimes that is presented to them, and if it's kind of in line with their fears or whatever, then they're gonna.
Kind of an Occam's razor kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
She did it once before. Why wouldn't I? Why would I be surprised if she turns on me now? What's the logical situation? So yeah, she, using her power, she sees how the bugs are being controlled. I believe it was the commands were nothing more than attack, move this way, attack, move this way. And it was the fact that the commands kept coming in a constant state that overrode her power. But she was able, using her power, she was able to determine the point of origin, and she headed up to where this swarm box was located. And she's hurt. She's in really bad shape. She manages to fire her way in there. After the faux Skitter leaves, Bitch tells Bentley to find and kill Skitter. Another terrifying aspect of this situation.
Which is, totally understandable. They think they've been betrayed again, and Bitch got shot. So it's kind of surprising that it doesn't happen even faster. But yeah, here comes the dog trying to get at her and break through the door. Luckily, it's too big to get in, but then Bastard's right behind, and it's going to fit. So yeah, then it's time is ticking down again. And it's just, out of the frying pan into the fire, and then into the smoking lava volcano. Just seems one thing gets worse than the next.
So let's take a step back. Let's see if I can put this all in perspective. If everything had worked out for Coil, Skitter would have died in the house. Even if faux Skitter had attacked them, if that part had gone off as planned, Bitch would have died from a gunshot wound, leaving Brian and Imp cursing Skitter.
Well,
but the only thing, go ahead.
Well, I think they talk about that later, that probably the plan was that Skitter would say, I'll take Dinah back to my hideout prior to taking her back to the mayor. You guys go to your areas. And then
yeah.
Coil would just make up some story.
Right.
That it was a betrayal thing or whatever, and that he'd still have the Undersiders working for him, except for Skitter. So I think that was kind of how Skitter thought it would probably be planned to unfold.
Yeah. Right. Okay. And they adapted, Coil's crew adapted on the fly. And so had it not been for the matter of Skitter's bulletproof silk jacket that Bitch was wearing, she would have been shot and possibly killed. And then they're probably, let's say that happens, there wouldn't have been any coming back from that situation for Brian at that point.
No, he would have been pretty upset, and it would have totally fractured the group, I think. And who knows what Imp would have done. It kind of touches on that, how upset she was, and saying, I told you if you ever did anything to my brother. So I think if fake Skitter had pulled it off and had left, Imp would have been really mad too. And so maybe Brian and Imp would have gone after, kind of done their own thing or whatever. Yeah, it would have really fragmented stuff.
Yeah, let's talk about Imp. Bentley tracks down Skitter. Imp is right there, finds her, and she's rightly pissed. And this was another situation, a lot of adrenaline pumping during these two chapters here. It's another situation where I was scared to death for what would happen to Skitter. She can't talk because she can't breathe, and Imp is righteously pissed off.
Yeah, and Imp is even more impulsive,
right,
than the others, and so yeah, she could do anything. She's just a loose cannon at this point very emotionally hyped up. And it just sounds like the only decision is whether Skitter's going to die fast or slow.
Mm-hmm. Or in the jaws of Bentley. The only thing that saves her from Bentley is the construction of that building that the swarm box was located in. The door frame was reinforced, and so he couldn't get his massive mug inside there. Rachel and Brian come in. I can just visualize the scene where he's hurt, and his only question to her was why. And just think about everything he's been through with her, from teammate to close friend to something more than that. And now the scene of betrayal, one thing on top of the other that Wildbow has used to bring us to this point, to that one question. You can just imagine the emotion behind that word.
Yeah, the one thing I wasn't sure of, I mean, I understand where he's coming from a little bit, I guess. Gru, that is.
Yeah.
But I just don't know if it were me, if I would have been that patient. You know, it says he waited patiently for me to recover enough to respond. And that gives Skitter a chance to come up with yet one more ace up her sleeve. And Gru is willing to try it, you know, and try to reach out to her with his darkness. Mm-hmm. And so be able to feel what she is, what she's going through, what's going on, through his kind of being able to absorb other people's power and stuff. So
and what the swarm box is doing to the insects.
Right. Yeah.
So you think, you're a little uncomfortable with that particular moment, or are you just seeing that through your own perspective there?
Yeah, I just, you know, it's so hard to know. I didn't get into dating and relationships until much later than this in my life. But even then, the first time I was kind of betrayed, if you will, or whatever, I was kind of out of my mind. You know, patience was not on the table. You know, I was just like, just totally flying off the handle. And so,
gotcha.
You know, just heartbroken and stuff. And so it's hard for me to put myself in that position. But I don't know if other people felt that way in high school when a relationship went bad or whatever.
Yeah, see,
maybe.
Yeah, this is one of those instances where I can see that, and from my own experiences and whatnot, and the wanting to know the why.
Gotcha.
The hurt of it is still there, but just why did you do this? And so, gotcha. Thank goodness that he can borrow people's powers to a certain extent,
right?
And so he was able to see, as we said there, that she didn't do it. She wasn't the one driving the attack. It was the swarm box, and so he has bitch use bastard to take it out. And as soon as the thing is broken down and no longer functioning, Skitter gains control over her insects. Imp, of course, is incensed and is like, what are you talking about? This isn't real. She's playing you. She didn't want to hear it. And Brian had to talk her and bitch off the ledge, so to speak.
Well, and that's kind of a sibling's job, right? Is that, you know, we've all had that friend who their significant other steps out on them or whatever, and they're like, oh, well, you know, I forgave him and I'll take him back. And you're like, no, they're not going to change. You know,
right. Yeah.
And so you got to be that like smelling salts to try to snap them out of it, you know? And so I just see Imp doing that, but this isn't just a feeling Gru has. He's actually been able to detect this. And so, you know, Imp is like, all right, well, this isn't just love being blind. This is right. Legit. So, and then Skitter kind of seals the deal by not trying to plead her own case. She says, we got to go help the others because they're in trouble now because they're with Coil.
Right. And that moves us on into chapter 13, which is the final chapter of this arc. And so the team, such as it is, Gru, Imp, Bitch, and Skitter try to map out their next move here. Tattletale and Regent are in trouble, as we said. They figure out that Coil doesn't necessarily know what took place right now, and they map out a way to go forward to try to trick him into believing that Skitter was killed. Gru does an Academy Award nominating act here, doesn't he?
Yeah, no doubt. It's pretty amazing how he does that. And, it just seems like, oh man, I can't imagine this, like trying to sit down at the table with Bobby Fischer or something and say, yeah, let's play a game of chess. It's just, how is he going to pull this off? Especially after just going through all this. But yeah, somehow he does. And they get him on the phone and he's able to fake him out.
Right. Let's talk about that moment with Rachel when she's coming to terms with this. It says here, Skitter asked Rachel, "Are you okay?" It says, Rachel didn't respond. Her head was turned my way, and I could imagine her staring, trying to read me. Her hand gripped Bastard's neck. It wasn't me, I told her. It wasn't her, Gru confirmed. I saw with her power. The box was controlling the bugs. And then a little further down, where Bitch acknowledges, yeah, okay, I understand. It's fine. I just don't like all this cloak and, or as she says, shadow and dagger stuff. And then Imp corrects her. And that moment where she says, I just can't understand on this stuff. Maybe it's because I'm stupid. And then later says, Skitter says, no, you're not stupid. Don't call yourself stupid. You just think differently. Once again, Skitter reaching out to Rachel to try to help her see how things are and not to feel negatively about herself or her teammates.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing that she's able to still keep trying to reach across that gap and trying to help Bitch process through this stuff, and not put the worst spin on everything. It's pretty amazing, I think, given all the stuff that's going on with Skitter, that she's able to do this. But it seems like it might finally be getting through a little bit.
Yeah. So this is one of those sections where my first read, I just blew through this on the audio. But now, as I was prepping for this episode and I'm listening to this thing again, and they describe how they came up with this facsimile of Skitter's corpse. Now I'm listening to this thing and I'm thinking, my God, you guys got to know this isn't going to work, right?
Yeah, I was thinking a raccoon is about what, the size of maybe a big raccoon would be a carry-on luggage size. And so its entrails would be super tiny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like that's going to work.
Although, you know what? Did you figure out at what point Coil knew that they were messing with him? Or wait a minute, a little further on, he does say that he tortured one of the Undersiders, didn't he? Okay, never mind. Dumb question. So yeah, they do come up with a plan. So they take a picture of Skitter's quote unquote lifeless form, send it to Coil, arrange a meet, and think that they're going to try to pull a fast one on him there. That's where Coil starts teleporting in his men. After they get to the boardwalk, starts teleporting out in his men, surround the Undersiders. And once again, our team's in danger and they're in a pretty bad spot.
Yeah, I thought that, again, with the way Wildbow writes about Coil and his power, that, was this the end game all along? Were these just wheels within wheels, and figured it would end up with, yeah, this wasn't the best outcome, but it was plan B. All right, I'll just take out all the Undersiders and, fish in a barrel kind of thing, get them in a spot, and then that's it. And Skitter's still in bad shape. So
yeah. And he said that he had, when he's going through his, it's not really a monologue. She is asking him questions. He began preparing for this possibility back after the Leviathan incident, where he said he realized her loyalties were iffy. So he's been planning for this for a long time. He's been prepping her body double for a long, long time. She's playing checkers. He's playing chess.
Definitely. Yeah. And that's again the scary part of his power is just that everything that happens gets filed away and gets analyzed, and different scenarios, different outcomes are prepared for. And, maybe those preparations aren't ever going to be needed, but they're there. And so it's kind of like, yeah, why? And he's done it time and again. So you wonder when you're ever going to get past all the different things he's tried to run through different simulations and figure out.
As we're moving on deeper into this chapter here, Skitter tries to get some promises from Coil. The team's surrounded. She's like, hey, she does have a dead man switch, so to speak. She's got Charlotte holed up in a location ready to send an email out with a bunch of incriminating evidence. Coil's acting like he doesn't care, or, hey, I can deal with that. And Skitter's like, if you're going to kill us, please leave her alive. Please leave Tattletale alive and do these other things. And Coil kind of laughs because he's like, you keep asking for stuff I was already going to do.
Skitter can't know that, obviously.
Right.
But yeah, it just makes sense when Coil starts saying it's like, well, no, these people would be super helpful. So I'm not just going to throw them away. It's just like we were talking about. They're all part of he doesn't know when a tool's going to be needed. So he's going to stash it.
And I can't remember if I've asked this question, so stop me if I have. There could never be a point where Coil was going to give up a precog for Skitter, as skillful as she is. I mean, did I bring that subject up before? And if not, what do you?
I think we've kicked it around before, yeah, and it was always kind of a head scratcher. It was just kind of like, well, wait a minute. This is like saying, yeah, I'll keep that cool little programmable watch that I have, and you can just have the Cray supercomputer over there. Yeah. That's fine. That's a good trade. Yeah. And it's like, no, why would he ever go for that? And, part of me was thinking, well, maybe he's got another precog that he's seen Skitter will be able to find somebody, or, he's seen Skitter's going to maybe, or Dinah said Skitter's going to change, or maybe there's something. But yeah, part of me was always just scratch my head on that. It just didn't make sense.
Oh, we've got some thunder rolling around in the background now. So,
okay.
Right. The team is surrounded. The travelers are there. Calvert's men are there. He tries to pull a fast one, teleporting in what ends up being a body double for Tattletale. And then, after Skitter confronts him on that, that's when the gunfire happens. She gets him to bring in the real Tattletale. They do a word exchange, their password exchange. And then he fires. He has his men fire at them, except things don't go quite as Calvert planned.
Yeah. So, and I think the problem that Calvert encountered here was he had just used a body double. I don't know that the Undersiders would have thought of that if it hadn't been for Faux Skitter just a little bit earlier. They're like, okay, he's got that tool now, so he may just use it over again. Then, the hail of gunfire is about to start, and you're like, well, that didn't seem like that was more like just a patter of gunfire, and we're all still standing here. And then it turns out that, yeah, maybe Skitter was playing checkers and Calvert was playing chess, but Tattletale was playing three-dimensional chess.
Right. So. Yeah. So this was just this whole long con that the girls started back when they met after the Leviathan fight at the monument. If you recall that part of the story, it was even before, as Tattletale says here, even before they talked about Skitter rejoining the group, the two of them talked about how to rescue Dinah. And so I think back to that point where I believe the Captain's Hill, I think, is where the monument is. Anyway, and I think that's where that discussion began to take place. So Lisa has always been on board with rescuing Dinah. And then it came about trying to convince the rest of the team to get on board doing that, which they successfully did. Tattletale has been raiding Coil's coffers and setting up her own little financial empire. Hey, she outplayed the player with her power.
Yeah. And I mean, again, we talked about this a little bit with Marquis in the last episode, but if Coil could run every scenario for every possible thing, he would just be overpowered, right? There'd be no way to trick him. And so it's one of those things where it's like, all right, get him focusing on a lot of different stuff, or try to figure out what he's focusing on, and then be doing stuff in the total opposite direction, behind his back, behind the scenes, under the radar. And then, maybe we can get to the point where he thinks he's standing on top of the castle that's impregnable, but we've, sent the sappers in under the wall, and they pull the plunger, and the whole thing collapses because the ground under it is blown out. So they definitely both do the rug pull on him, and he's pretty stunned.
I came across this one section. This is the issue with Leet's power. So let me read this, and we can have a good laugh at his expense. This is where Skitter asked Coil, why didn't you drop me on top of a bomb? This has to do about teleportation, that teleportation device. Coil responds, an unfortunate side effect of Leet's power. Leet believes it was the proximity to the bomb or particular signature of the vat of acid that made it so likely to occur. But with my power, I observed that it wasn't merely a chance that the teleportation would fail and your well-trained body double would be caught instead, but a surety. No less than 12 tries with variables changed slightly. Leet's power sabotages him, it seems. And then Skitter asks if that's Leet's passenger at work, and that's where Coil replies, passenger? That's what Bonesaw calls the agents. That whole section was kind of cool and explained why they didn't just drop her in something that would be terminal the moment that they teleported away. It's because it would have messed with Leet's teleportation device.
Yeah, and that is a really interesting wrinkle, and I had kind of lost sight of that, but it kind of goes along with the Manton effect,
mm-hmm.
And maybe there's just this kind of mental block that Parahumans really struggle to get around that lets things go beyond a certain thing. So maybe Leet was fine, or him and his pastor or whatever, with doing teleportation, doing whatever, but not to the point where it would be instant assured death. He couldn't wrap his mind around that, or the passenger, he couldn't integrate the passenger enough to do that. But it's an interesting wrinkle in this whole thing that I hadn't really thought about till just now.
Yeah. Oh, I hadn't considered the way that you put it. That's very, very cool. And as we're moving toward the climax of this situation, Bitch calls Calvert out, and Calvert reacts, as it says here, reacts like he's been slapped. Bitch is like, hey, you said I'd be safe, and if I join this team, I've never been less safe, less secure. Everybody lies. And Calvert's like, hey, enough of this. Say one more thing, and I'll have my guys shoot you or your dogs. So he was surprised that she came down on him hard, calling him out.
Yeah, I think that just shows how he didn't really understand her mentality.
Mm-hmm.
He was able to kind of use her, but didn't really take the time to understand her. And so, it's all about pack loyalty with her. And she didn't care what the pack was doing as long as the pack had her back. If they ended up having to be all super bad, then that's okay,
Mm-hmm.
as long as she and her dogs are okay. But once she finds out that that was all fake, then she's just like, oh man, you suck even worse.
Right. I know I've been bouncing back and forth in this thing. Calvert calls on his men to shoot the Undersiders, and nothing goes the way that he expects. Most of the bullets are fired over people's head. I think Taylor takes another one in the stomach. Brian took one, but Tattletale has bought the loyalty of the majority of the important captains. I mean, she had her guys, and then probably reached out to some of the others. She points out that, hey, mercs go where the money is, and that's true. And because of that, she's able to offer the rest of Calvert's men a year's salary if they just either leave town or just kind of stay on the down low, as she puts it, while she and the rest of the Undersiders rebuild their empire.
Yeah, pretty amazing the plan they cooked up. But again, it's just since Tattletale was right there, she was able to kind of keep putting in these little seeds of doubt and
Mm-hmm.
mess with him and get him looking the other way, misdirecting him a little bit, all the while keeping her crockpot plan going on in the background, just slowly warming up for the time it was ready to eat.
Yep. Yep. So Coyle's caught. He's going down. The travelers are like, hey, Undersiders, back off. We need him to handle a couple of things for us still. And if you try to kill him, we're going to kill you. And that's where Tattletale tells them, yeah, nah, this dude's lying to you. He can't help Noel. He can maybe help you with this one thing, but he can't help Noel. And their whole thing is not going down the way they want it. Skitter convinces Ballistic to leave the Travelers. Did you see that coming?
I wasn't surprised when it happened.
Uh-huh.
He was very unhappy and disappointed with how things were going on all sorts of different levels. And then when the power shifts so abruptly like this, he's just kind of like, all right, this is done. Maybe with Chessmaster Coil, there was a glimmer of hope, but without him, I'm giving it up. I'm throwing in the towel.
He was 1 foot out the door given the opportunity, and here it is. Sundancer and Genesis say, no, we're gonna stay with our team. Hey, this is the promise that we made, kind of thing. And then the moment of truth comes. Tattletale tells Skitter, you don't have to be the one to do this. And to which Skitter says, yeah, I think I do. And let me see if I can find this one section here where Skitter runs through her mind all of the death that she's been surrounded by or involved in, not directly, but leading up to this moment. It says, I remember trying to kill Mannequin with grenades, going all out in an attempt to end a man's life, a madman, a monster, but it was what it was. And then a little further, it says, I'd come to terms with so much of that by telling myself it was leading to this. I'd known deep down it would happen, that my fight against Calvert would have to end here. I walked forward until Calvert was beneath me. I drew my gun, checked there was ammo in the clip. You're not a killer, Calvert said. No, I replied. I couldn't see, so I screwed my eyes closed, felt the moisture of tears threatening to spill forth. I took a deep breath. But I suppose, in a roundabout way, you made me into one, I finished. I aimed the gun and fired. So there it is. Calvert's gone, and Skitter killed him. The team rallies around her. Gru embraces her. He gives Tattletale Calvert's phone. They acknowledge they can't get rid of they can't kill the Travelers. That's not what they're about. travelers are going to be angry because there goes their plans with Coil. Yeah. Oh, I want to backtrack and bring up the fact that as far as the Noel situation, Coil offered to put the travelers in touch with the woman who knew more about superpowers than anybody else on the planet. Did you catch that?
Yeah, I figured that was a Cauldron reference. So,
Have
but
we
you
have we
know, I
come
think
across have we discussed Coil and Cauldron?
I forget if we did or not.
Okay. Just wondering. Let's leave that up in the air.
Okay. I figured he must have had an inkling about it or known about it. I mean, as he's compiling all his data and he's running all of his different simulations and stuff, he's got to know that
Something's up.
as pieces fall into place, that somebody's not all these powers are just being naturally, if that's the way to put it, triggered. Some of them are artificially triggered. And then he's going to start putting out feelers and trying to track stuff down. So
Okay.
I figure he knew something was going on. Somebody of his caliber would know something was going on.
Okay, cool. Let's see here. So there's one other place. Yes. As the team is gathering up and getting ready to head out, they climb into one of the trucks. And I like this line right here. We turned away. With my swarm sense, I was able to recognize Miner, Tattletale's man, helmetless, opening the doors of one of the vans for us. I took a seat. It wasn't Tattletale or Gru that sat down beside me, but Rachel. She took my hand in hers, held it fiercely. I wasn't sure what to make of it, so I simply accepted it. Possibly one of my favorite lines in the story thus far.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, you can definitely see that Rachel is just hot or cold. There's no in between. And when she felt betrayed by Skitter, that was it. And then, it was just super hard to even get her to not be ready to kill her at a moment's notice, and to get her to let her back in a little bit. But then once it turns out that Rachel realizes that Skitter was on her side all the time, and that Coil was the one that was the disloyal one, the liar, the cheat, then Rachel's like, well, now we're tied together. Now we're hooked. This is, I see that you were the one that was there for me all along. So
right, possibly cool. A great metaphor for Rachel accepting her into her pack.
Exactly. Yeah.
The team goes to Tattletale's base and they rescue Dinah and Regent. Another moving scenario. Poor Dinah, she apologizes to Skitter for having put her in the situation that she did. Skitter's like, I'm sorry I took so long to get here to rescue you. Pretty moving situation there where the two girls embrace.
Yeah, because it was, looking back on this was kind of like the Doctor Strange thing, that there's like a 1 in 8 billion chance that this is going to work, and it's going to look like hell before it gets better. And here they're at the end, they're like, oh, it somehow it worked. And I'm sorry it was so hurtful the whole time, but now we do get this wonderful embrace, and it seems like it was all worth it for a moment.
Yes, for a moment. So as we're heading toward the final couple of paragraphs here, it's bad. Tattletale makes a run down toward where Noel has been held. Skitter and Gru follow, and the two doors to her enclosure, if you will, have been blown open, just bent outwards and destroyed. Tattletale says, in a final act of spite, that Coil made sure Noel heard everything that was transpiring on the beach over his cell phone. As we're heading out toward the end, and Skitter asked her, on a scale of 1 to 10, I asked, just how bad is this? And Tattletale replies, "Let me answer your question with another question," Tattletale said. "You think we could convince the PRT to turn on the air raid sirens?" And that
Dang.
brings us to the end.
Oh
Oh
man.
boy. So we have that nice moment. Dinah's rescued. We've got Regent out of his captivity. Everything's cool. And then we see that Noelle has escaped. Yeah, it's a bad deal as far as, at least at this moment. We don't know how bad it is. Tattletale's talking about air raid sirens like they would for an Endbringer, but so
Right.
no, it's bad.
Well, and she was behind two vault doors.
Right.
So that's how worried they were about her getting out. But yeah, this is like, one of those Hallmark commercials or something, and
Mm-hmm.
and there's the sweet moment at the end, and then all of a sudden everybody gets run over by a truck or something. It's just like, what the heck? We thought this was gonna be happy family right now, and I guess not. What was I
No.
thinking?
Yes, it's Worm, bro. Where are you coming from thinking that? So
I've been brainwashed by Disney. I keep hoping there's going to be that extended Disney moment. Just now, not today.
So before we get to Andy's overall impressions, I want to ask my questions of Andy here at this moment. So I deliberately kind of blew through where Skitter actually took out Coil. So I want to pose these questions to you, Bud, and let you expound on them in your reply here. So first off, what, if any, is your level of disappointment in Taylor taking a life? And the second question is, did you see this coming? Did you think we'd actually be here? And do you think this was a necessary step from Wildbow for this character? Why don't you take that in any order and answer that, and as far as that whole Skitter killing Coil thing?
All right. Well, as far as the first question goes, I wasn't disappointed. I think Wildbow did a great job of kind of making this seem somewhat inevitable, and painting Coil Calvert as such a horrible thing that there's no way that he could be left to live. And the person that had been most directly impacted by this had been Skitter.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wasn't disappointed, I guess. But as far as if this was a necessary step or not, thinking back to my characterization or how I thought of Skitter, I never would have thought it would come to this.
Mm-hmm.
I assumed that she would be villainous, but would still not cross certain lines. And obviously, Calvert felt that way too. But, it seems like, and, I have no frame of reference other than other literary works or historical works, but the more death that someone sees, it seems like the less inherent value an individual human life has.
Mm-hmm.
So people who have gone through like the meat grinder in Vietnam or World War II or whatever, they've almost become desensitized a little bit, or it's just,
it happens.
You brought face to face with morality or mortality.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, yeah, all right, we all recognize that people are going to die, but people who've been through that kind of thing say, well, people are actually going to be killing people, ending people's lives, and it's going to happen a lot. And so this is just one more. It's not this way out there kind of thing that's really hard for people to grasp. I remember back in the early part of my career, the place I was working was not in the greatest part of town.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody mentioned to me that there had been a murder near our office, and that a couple of street punks had gotten into it and one had gotten stabbed. And I was like, whoa, that's something you only hear about on the news. But then driving home, there was the body under the sheet.
Oh, wow.
And, they were still in, and I was just floored. I'm like, it's one thing to see it on a screen or whatever, or read about it, but to actually like drive by and see a body,
Mm-hmm.
it really hits home. And so I guess I had the tiniest inkling of what it'd been like to just see that repeated over and over, from the Endbringers and from the Slaughterhouse Nine and whatever.
Right.
And eventually you're just like, yeah, it happens. And all right, this is what I got to do. And it's just one more to add it to the count kind of thing. So I see it. I mean, it totally goes against what I thought was
Mm-hmm.
going to happen and what I predicted, but I do think that it makes sense from the context of the whole story, that it's a world of death practically, and so everybody's going to kind of get mired in it, if you will.
Okay. Gotcha. All right, bud. Well, then now why don't we move on and get your overall impressions of the arc? Another large one. So why don't you dig in? What are your impressions?
Yeah, this was a wild one. There were so many different parts to it, and there was a lot of tension, not in the sense that, like the Endbringers or
Mm-hmm.
the Slaughterhouse Nine, where you think everything's going to go, but just that Skitter's character was always under the gun, so to speak, and you didn't know how she was going to fare. It wasn't a matter of like Brockton Bay getting wiped off the map, but just Skitter, that her life hung in the balance. It seemed like the whole time,
Mm-hmm.
and she just kept pushing through it and finding ways to get around it, and it was just kind of amazing. But it was tough at times, and like I said, for a couple of different episodes, the cliffhangers, man, it was just every time we stopped, I'm like, oh, dang it.
So to the folks who asked if that's on purpose, it's not. It really isn't. I'm using the length of time that the audiobooks each chapter is. I look on the on Spotify and I look at the length of times. I try to break our episodes down into manageable bites for us. So I'm not doing this to Andy on purpose as far as the cliffhangers go. It's just where I decide to break up our episodes. So anyway.
Sure. I'm not going to say you're pulling a coil on me here, but I'm thinking you're just telling me that.
Oh no, man. Come on. Would I do that? No.
I don't know. We never played chess, so I don't know if you would do that or not.
Now it's time for Andy to announce his choice for key character of the arc. Whether hero or villain, cape or civilian, Andy will identify the characters that stood out to him, whether it's for good or ill. Andy, who's your selection and why?
Well, I think it has to be Skitter. She was just put in so many challenging situations where she was out on an island, in so many ways, and just had to keep battling through things and improvising and coming up with new things and being at the edge of failure and being able to jump over the chasm to victory, or at least to continued existence. Yeah, it's just phenomenal how, and I think you covered it really well. What must her power levels be at now for her to keep cranking it up and being able to overcome insurmountable odds, or seemingly insurmountable odds. So yeah, Skitter for sure. And then I think I have to give an honorable mention to Tattletale, though, because as you said, she and Skitter cooked up this kind of idea, at least, of a long con way back. And Tattletale's been able to hide this from the person who would be most likely to discover it and figure it out, and keep the pot boiling on the back burner without him realizing it, all the way up until they were able to turn the tables on him. And so Skitter, for heroic efforts and being able to keep going through these super difficult situations, but Tattletale to be able to keep the home fires burning so that in the end they can eliminate Coil and rescue Dinah. So Skitter with an honorable mention for Best Supporting Actress for Tattletale.
Very cool, man. Skitter and Tattletale it is, the dynamic duo. All right.
There you go.
Okay, everyone. We are done for now. Thanks for being here with us. We're heading towards some pretty big moments in the story. We hope you'll come along for the ride. So until next time, take care.
And once again, thanks for helping us hit the 200 subscriber mark. And for those of you who are enjoying this but haven't subscribed yet, feel free to do that. Invite your friends, family, loved ones, strangers on the bus, whatever. I've been telling people about it, so I hope you are too. We're really enjoying this, and we're glad you're here. And we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for joining us in this video. We hope you'll like, comment, and subscribe. If not, thanks for stopping by anyway, and we hope you'll return. Music is by the band YYNOT from their self-titled debut CD. You can find more information in the link down below. Catch you later.